The variables around long-term planning will change. It's way more than what's your rate of return in the market, and how much are you saving. Those are important things. They're all, part of the equation. But we need to make sure that we're planning and have a strategic plan that takes all variables into consideration. And they need to be variables that you can kind of be nimble with. You need to be able to control. You need to be able to pivot when necessary. And I think if you're planning for more than 5 to 7 year increments, you're potentially doing yourself some hardship, right? Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? It is Chris with Life 180. And for this video, I want to talk to you about how to create passive income. And if you've been watching this channel, you know that that's a big portion of what we talk about. And I think before I get into how to create passive income and some different strategies and conversations around what that looks like, what I want to talk about first and foremost is the problem. The biggest problem that we have in this country is the fact that most people are operating in what I would consider the greatest failed financial experiment of all time. And what I mean by that is this whole idea of 401ks, IRAs, qualified plans, any kind of investment vehicle that makes you give up control of your money, put it into a financial vehicle or an environment where you don't have control of the money, where you are planning for a 30 to 40 year time frame where we have no idea what the environment is going to look like 30, 40 years from now, 20 years from now. Heck, we don't even know what it's going to look like 10 years from now, right? And so if you don't have any clarity into what you're planning for, how can you be successful? I mean, the variables, the environment, like if you think about what does it take to be successful with your financial plan, with achieving financial freedom. I don't even like to use the word retirement, right? We're all just, retirement is simply just a way of saying like, I don't want to work anymore. I want to make sure that by the time I hit an age, I'm able to stop working and I have enough money, assets, income to be able to retire. And it's not a matter of what do I have for assets? It's a matter of what are those assets going to provide me in the form of a lifestyle. And that's what cash flow hacking is all about. Is teaching people how to get there on a predictable basis. And the only way to do it is to not think about how do I accumulate a pile of money, because there are variables that will come into play that will hurt potentially your like the results that you're going after. They're going to hurt like the mission. So for instance, and I'm trying to think of a way to articulate that clearly, because once again, I don't script these things. I'm just kind of going on this. So think about it this way. The idea of how much money you need is based off an old paradigm, right? So the idea of qualified accounts, 401ks, of the, accounts of the like, back when those first started was in the 80s. It's about 1981, and I was born in 1980, right? So 401ks are just a little younger than I am, right? And so if we look at what interest rates were back then and what the fixed income market looked like, and the idea of getting to $1 million in a retirement account, back then $1 million was a lot more money than it is today because of the fact that inflation plays a part in it.
$1 million.
Well, don't you think we should maybe ask for more than $1 million? $1 million isn't exactly a lot of money these days.
And B, the fixed income environment was a lot different. Back through the 80s and 90s, to be able to pull 8% out of your retirement account and have that money last for the rest of your life was a realistic expectation, right? Because of the fixed markets, the bond rates, all these different things that go into being able to pull fixed income out and use different fixed assets to fund your retirement on a very predictable or guaranteed basis while you were in retirement. 8% on $1 million is $80,000 a year. $80,000 a year is a lot more money, especially in the 80s and 90s, than $80,000 than it is today. That's first and foremost. But the thing is when you were planning through your 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, and you were trying to get to this number of, let's just say the number was $1 million, whatever it is, and then you get there and you get to this environment, and maybe you got to the number that you wanted, right? Maybe you got to that $1 million, but the environment's changed. Now the interest rates, the amount of money that you can expect to take out of that is, realistically, the Monte Carlo simulations are saying like 2.75% is the number, right? So now instead of thinking you're taking $80,000 out, you're taking $27,500 That's the number that you're going to be able to safely withdraw on an annual basis from your $1 million fund that you thought was going to create this financial freedom for you. And now 27,500 is not anywhere close to 80,000, but then it gets worse because inflation comes into the mix. So when you were thinking that you had 80,000 back then and you were thinking of it from a quality of life perspective, now it's not even $27,500 in 1990 dollars. Now it's $27,500 in today's dollars, which is basically the equivalent of 13,000 or maybe 15,000 back then. So it gets worse and worse and worse. And so my point to bring this up is that the variables around long-term planning will change. It's way more than what's your rate of return in the market, and how much are you saving. Those are important things. They're all, part of the equation. But we need to make sure that we're planning and have a strategic plan that takes all variables into consideration. And they need to be variables that you can kind of be nimble with. You need to be able to control. You need to be able to pivot when necessary. And I think if you're planning for more than 5 to 7 year increments, you're potentially doing yourself some hardship, right? And this is what I mean. So this is why we talk about cash flow hacking, and it's all about creating passive income. So when we talk about creating passive income, all we're talking about is investing for cash flow. We're talking about making sure that you put your money in an account that you have liquidity, use, and control of, and you're saving before you invest. That's a huge fundamental concept and understanding that people need to have down. And once you understand that you're saving before you invest, the mindset about chasing returns goes out the window. I think another big lie that we're taught is the younger you are, the more risk you can take. Well, while that might be fundamentally true, because you have more time to make up for losses, right? Like if you make an investment that's high risk in your 20s and you lose everything, well, yeah, you have longer to be able to make up for that loss, right? Versus if you were 55 and you lost everything, now you're at a place where you only have whatever amount of time, a shorter window to be able to make up for that loss. And so the younger you are, the more risk you can take from that perspective. But I'm here to tell you, the younger you are, the less risk you have to take, right? Like think about this. The idea of compounding means you have to contribute consistently and you have to give it time to operate and you have to avoid losses. That's the biggest thing. So only in financial planning do we tell people that the greatest way to increase your chance of success is by increasing your chance of failure, right? By going after and going riskier, younger. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is a myth that the financial institutions of this world, that Wall Street has taught us, that has kind of been jamming down our throats to get us to operate in their financial system, transferring wealth from Middle Street to Main Street, right? Or from Main Street to Wall Street, I should say. And so that's really important to understand. So we need to make sure that we have a financial strategy that helps us retain control of our money. And it's not about chasing returns. It's about building safety. Wealthy people understand this, that the market is cyclical. It's not linear. It doesn't just go up on this nice straight linear growth curve, even though that's what all the financial advisors would want to tell you. They say the market goes up, it comes down, but over a long period of time, it's going to average about 8.3%, because since 1925, that's what the S&P 500 has done, is about 8.3% clip. You look at that and you realize, okay, that may be the case, but that's an average. Well, averages don't mean anything. What matters is what's the real rate of return? What is the internal rate of return when you take in losses? Because I'm here to tell you, average rate of return has nothing to do with the results that you're getting in your financial life, and that's the greatest myth. Because think about it this way. Let's run a little math scenario here. So if you look at it, let's say you had $1,000 in an account, and the market, the S&P 500, next year went down 50%. I'm going to use really round, big numbers here to prove a point and a principle, but you can do this on every percentage, and it works. You can run the math, go run an Excel sheet, and I'm telling you, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So you have $1,000, the market goes down 50%. How much do you have left? Yes, you have $500, right? So you have $500. Next year, the market goes back up 100%, right? So your $500, now you're feeling excited because the market went up 100%, right? So how much money do you have? Well, you're back to $100 or back to $1,000, because your 500 went up by 100%. And it got back to the $1,000, right? And so when you look at that, you go, okay, what was your average rate of return? Most people would say zero, because you go, well, I started with 1,000, I ended with 1,000 a couple years later, and so my average rate of return must be zero. Well, in fact, that is your real rate of return, but that is not your average rate of return. Your average rate of return is simply saying you had a negative year of 50%, you had a plus year of 100%, right? So you go 100 minus 50 is 50, and then you have 2 years, so you divide that by 2, and you have an average rate of return of 25%. Yet, in this extreme scenario, you have an average rate of return of 25%, but you have no real rate of return in your account. In fact, in this scenario, you probably lost purchasing power because of the way that the Federal Reserve manages inflation. So that actually makes you worse off financially, even though your portfolio performed at a plus 25% rate, right? So average rate of return, when these advisors are telling you buy and hold 8.3% average long-term, don't buy into that garbage. It doesn't work that way. So therefore, let's get to the point of this and talk about how to invest for cash flow. I'm a big believer that you need to save. You need to save a couple years of income in a safe account that you have liquidity, use, and control of, in an account that will not be going after massive returns, but that's going to protect you, in an account that's going to be hedged against inflation. That way you can have it for emergency and you can have it for opportunity. If you build that financial bedrock in your life, it allows you to build a financial fortress that will allow you to show up more powerfully in your life than you ever imagined. Now, when you do this, what do you do with it? I'm a big believer that you need to invest in hard assets that cash flow. The reason that we want hard assets is because when you have a hard asset, it has an inflationary protection inside of it, built into it. Because hard assets, as inflation goes up, hard asset values typically are pegged at least a little bit to inflation. So that's the nature of the beast. And then if that hard asset is kicking out cash flow, what is that going to be? What is the cash flow going to be? Well, the cash flow is going to be pegged to the value of it typically, or at least closer, and it's going to be kicking out cash flow. And if you think about cash flow in the context of, a dividend paying stock, right? That dividend can be cash flow, but you reinvest the dividend in most scenarios with a dividend paying stock, and that allows it to compound. Now, in a hard asset, the asset will go up. I'm going to use cash flow real estate, right? That's our biggest focus when we talk about cash flow hacking, is cash flow, turnkey cash flow real estate, hands off for the investors. We have an amazing program. We could do that, but the best way to do it is to get your money into cash flow real estate. You get the tax benefits, the depreciation of the property, which allows you to reduce your tax liability short term. You get the appreciation of the house, which is pegged to inflation, which is great. But it's also, if you invest in the right locations, and you invest in the path of progress, if you will, then you actually get other growth on top of inflation for the appreciation of the house as well, which is amazing. But then you also get cash flow every month, every year that asset is kicking out, kind of like a dividend. And that cash flow, when you reinvest it into more properties, that allows you to kind of have more control of your environment. You can compound that, you can get more properties. Like I said, you could do this with other cash flow assets as well. It's easiest to talk about when it comes to real estate. And when it comes from that perspective, you have the ability to invest and have a strategy over a shorter window, over a shorter period of time, right? And so from that angle, now you are able to have more clarity on the time horizon on what you are doing. And because of your ability to kind of get out of the market, to be able to sell the assets, be able to take the cash flow, manage it more effectively, you have control of that money, you have control of the decisions. It's not this buy and hold in partnership with the government, all these different things for a 40-year period, or at least until you're 59 and a half. It allows you to have more direct control of the results in your life, and it will produce a more predictable result, getting you to where you want to get on a more predictable basis. So anyway, that is all I got for you today. So I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, click the bell, that way you get notified every time I launch a new video. If you haven't already, please smash that like button. There's nothing more that you can do for the channel than smash that like button, share this video, get it out there to people. Appreciate you. And like I said, if you have any questions at all, you can also set up a call with one of our Life 180 consultants. Free clarity call. There's a link in the description below. Until next video, go out, have a blessed, inspirational day. I'll talk to you soon.